One of the key concepts and principles of corrective exercise approaches to the hip and shoulder complexes is a concept of joint centration. And a lot of times we get confused with the term centration, but if we think about a ball and socket, it's sort of easy to visualize. If we think about the femoral head, for example, in the acetabulum, we can think of that centrated joint position, or maintaining an optimal axis of rotation. So again, if we think about like this joint right where my finger is as being the optimal axis of rotation, the joint maintains its ability to rotate through the hip socket through all the fundamental and cardinal planes of motion. Two key concepts about joint centration. One, stabilization. Generally speaking, the deep stabilizers are key to maintaining a centrated joint position. So for example, the psoas, the deep fibers of the glute maximus, the deep medial fibers of the glute maximus, the deep fibers of the glute medius, glute minimus, the deep external hip rotators, all help to maintain the centrated joint position so that the more superficial stabilizers and global mobilizers, for example, the superficial fibers of the glute max, the superficial hip flexors, rectus femoris, tensor fasciae lata, the adductor complex, the superficial fibers of the glute medius, they can all do, the iliacus as a hip flexor, can all do the cardinal motions and the big gross movements. So we can maintain this nice stabilized position during functional activity. The other component that creates proper joint centration is the ability to dissociate the joint. And dissociation just means maintaining an optimal alignment and point of rotation and being able to move the femoral head independent of the acetabulum, or moving the ilium independent of the femoral head. So the ability to move the joints surfaces independent of each other, because a lot of our clients that lose the ability to dissociate, where they have too much gripping from their rotators or their superficial glute max, or have joint capsule stiffness, and they've lost that ability. So when they move their hip into motion, they drive motion from the low back, or they drive motion below from the knee, because they have inability to dissociate the joint surfaces. So centration is the combination of both being able to stabilize statically and through dynamic movement, as well as to dissociate, move the joint segments independent of each other, but under optimal functional control. Mobilization is really just, do you have mobility of the joint? It doesn't talk about or consider optimal motor control. When we talk about dissociation, we're talking about, do you have the ability to optimally control this motion that you have available through the joint articulations? So centration, again, will be something that is key during the corrective exercise process. And again, all joints need to be centrated. For example, if we're looking at the spine, we want the spine to be centrated, segments on top of segments. We don't want one segment to be shifted over here like this and then trying to create proper motion. We want to maintain a relative centrated joint position of segment upon segment. And this is not to say there'll never be a time when you don't have shearing happen, because shearing is a normal part of motion, or translation. These are all normal parts of motion. The goal is to maintain relative length of the joint, a relative normal axis of rotation, and the control, the functional motor control through both stabilization and dissociation to create optimal movement. Usually when our clients have poor stabilization and or movement patterns, is because they've lost the ability to centrate their joints. If we can centrate their joints, we can turn on the coactivators around the joints and improve a lot of their movement patterns without doing a lot of different corrective exercise strategies in addition. Sometimes we'll have to release some things, sometimes we'll have to activate some things, sometimes we'll have to give them some visual cueing or postural cueing to help maintain the position, and that's why we use a VIP plus B strategy later on in these videos. You'll see that. But again, the key concept, centrate the joints, and you'll maintain the integrity of the joint, maintain joint health, and improve optimal movement patterns.